Hello. Welcome to technically the third day of 13 Days in the Crypt. Sadly, yesterday we had a bit of an internet issue and I couldn't stream because the internet down was was down from about 5 a.m. to like 5 p.m. So I wasn't even able to do the preparation I needed to, let alone had the time to actually stream because I streamed at 4 and it was down to 5. So that was upsetting. Second day, just big old screw you from my internet service. But it wasn't just me, it was everybody in the area. There was a huge outage. So, seems to be backing up fine today. As you can see, I am an alien today. Got the antenna. Yeah. Not as in-depth as my last costume, but aliens can be whatever we want, right? Yes. Alright, so as I said on Tuesday... Sorry. Alright, had to go deal with some rowdy bunch. Okay, so alien today. Where was I? Alien. As on Tuesday, what I said I was going to do was Ronald Reagan's burial. So, hopefully all of you know who Ronald Reagan was. His burial was quite the spectacle, you know? He was a huge figure in history, and he had massive, influence throughout the world. So funerals are changing, they're becoming bigger and bigger, and mourning practices have reached farther in terms of population size and location than they previously did. But that is the magic of the modern era, and flight and internet, cell phones, all of that. It's all awesome stuff that we can utilize to touch anybody in the world. So we will go on to, as you know, one of the most famous quoted lines. So, yes, everybody's heard that line. Even people who aren't alive then know that line. But let's play some spooky music and move on. Shall we? I will go on to... So, Reagan died in 2004. His service included a riderless black horse carrying his boots turned backward, an F-15 planes flying above Constitution Avenue, and a group of 1,200 soldiers responsible for transporting the body from California to D.C. and then back to California again. So he did a whole trip. After Reagan's death, his body was taken from his Bel Air, Los Angeles home to the Kingsley and Gates Funeral Home in Santa Monica, California, to prepare the body for burial. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to actually discuss American burial practices and what embalming entails. A lot of people don't really know 100% what actually happens. They just know that's what we do. So I figured we could do this, and it's quite an in-depth process, really. There's a lot that goes into this, time-consuming, and a lot of detail. It's interesting. You could probably put it almost on par with like Egyptian mummification, how much of a process that was. So embalming is the treatment of a deceased individuals to temporarily preserve and forestall decomposition. In 1867, chemist August Wilhelm von Hofmann discovered formaldehyde, replacing the use of arsenic in the 20th century, and became the foundation for modern methods of embalming. Modern embalming cocktails contain a mixture of formaldehyde, glutaraldehyde, ethanol, humectants. Yes, humectants, sorry, and the little squiggly line made it look like a B, and other agents. So the first step is laying them down to sleep. To begin, the deceased is undressed and placed on their back, with private areas covered. Gotta make sure we maintain their dignity. And a mortuary table with the head elevated by a block, so it's a pretty sleek metal table, good for any type of fluids to be able to just flow right off into a designated area. It doesn't flow off the side, it has like a guided channel for it. Then, second step is checking for vitals. You may not think that that's necessary, but it is. You want to make sure before you put someone through this that they are in fact dead. So check the vitals. Possibly the most important involves checking vital signs to prevent premature burial. So embalmers check for clotted corneas, lividity, which is the like bruising that happens on a body. So if you die laying on your back, fluids will pool in the back and it will look kind of like bruising. Rigor mortis and a pulse in the carotid or radial artery. If you don't know what rigor mortis is, it's when the body stiffens and you can't really move it after death. It happens a little bit after, it's not immediate. Step 3 is to bathe and massage the body. You wash the deceased with disinfectant and germicidal solutions while bending, flexing, and massaging arms and legs to relieve rigor mortis. You gotta make sure any contagions are taken care of. You don't want the coroner to be exposed, and you want them to be able to maintain a clean, healthy environment that they then wouldn't pass on to anybody who's mourning. And also you want to kill any bacteria that's on the body, because bacteria is what starts the decomposition process, and the whole goal of this is to kind of keep it at bay as long as possible. If you didn't know, bacteria is actually what begins the decomposition process, and it's our own bacteria that we find in our gut and everything that starts to eat away at the intestinal linings, the stomach linings, and everything, just because it's there and you don't have anything protecting those organs anymore that you would produce if you were alive, and then you start to bloat. That's why you see in movies and stuff that are somewhat realistic is a body will bloat. It's the bacteria consuming and releasing gases and such. Then you have to set the face. Before any incision is made, embalmers will set the features of the deceased, oftentimes using a photo provided by the family or friends to set the eyes and mouth. The eyes are posed using an eye cap, which keeps the eyes shut and in a natural expression. The mouth is then set by wiring the jaw shut, suturing the lips and gums, and an adhesive is used to make the expression look as relaxed and natural as possible. So you have to make sure the jaw gets wired shut, because if you're laying on your back and you don't have this tendons, skin, and muscles keeping the jaw up, it moves freely. and it will just fall forward, and you don't really want an open mouth gaping when people are trying to mourn or anything. You want them to look like they're asleep. Although I don't know about you guys, but I'll sleep, like if I'm in a dead sleep, I just kind of and drool. But not pretty. You don't want that. So, yeah, they'll use a picture and just kind of try to make the body look as alive as they possibly can and filled out, because things will quickly dry up and sink. Step 5 is arterial embalming, drain and eject. So arterial embalming is the process of draining the blood vessels while simultaneously injecting embalming chemicals into arteries. This is done using a centrifugal pump which mimics the beating of a heart, which while massaging the body to break up blood clots and ensure thorough distribution of embalming fluid. So you're using the own body's distribution process to get that throughout the formaldehyde and embalming, all the embalming fluids throughout the body, which is easier than trying to just like soak the body in formaldehyde. You wouldn't embalming fluid, you wouldn't have to use as much, and it would be quicker process. And then after that, you use a hypodermic embalming for those hard to reach places. So this will get it throughout the fluids throughout the body, but it's not going to get it in every nook and cranny, which you need. You need to make sure that the entire body is soaked with these fluids rather than just majority of it, because if those parts aren't, that will decay quicker than the other parts, and you're going to run into issues of the embalming not actually working. A supplemental method of embalming in which fluid is injected into the tissue using a hypodermic needle and syringe to treat areas where arterial fluids did not reach. Hypodermic embalming is used on a case-by-case basis, so it may not always need it. Sometimes a lot of people are going to need it, but they're going to need it in different locations, and you just kind of use a needle to kind of put more of the embalming fluid around wherever it needs in the body. Step 8 is surface embalming and washing. You utilize embalming chemicals to restore surface damage due to decomposition, cancer, or other epidermal injury, and is applied directly to the skin. This is an as-needed step which is either followed or replaced by re-washing and drying the deceased. Step 9 is to moisturize and makeup. A moisturizing cream or lotion is applied to the deceased, and makeup is applied to the face, neck, and hands to mimic a natural complexion. Hair gel or baby oil may be applied to the hair and styled, while baby powder is applied to the body to eliminate odors. Sometimes wax, plaster of Paris, and other cosmetic techniques are used to reconstruct features. So if you have an individual who suffered a traumatic damage to the body at death, so if you were in a car accident or something, they may need to utilize a bit more drastic makeup measures to make you look a little bit more alive. And then the final step is to dress the deceased for the funeral service and place in the coffin or casket. So that's the entire process. It's quite a bit, and it preserves it for a while. It keeps it from decomposing so that you can have this funeral process without it being too uncomfortable for people. The U.S. actually has some pretty strict funerary laws on what you can and can't do with bodies. The casket, so going back, that was the process of embalming. This is what most people, if you're not doing, the incineration one, I can't think of the word, then you're going to go through embalming most likely. And so back to Ronald Reagan and what happened with his, so he went to the morgue in to Santa Monica. And then after that, his casket was transported by hearse and displayed at the no, yeah, at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library. So if you don't know, every president gets a library, which is a museum about their time in office, their achievements, and even their past. His is in Simi Valley, California, if you're ever interested in going. After being displayed there, he was flown to D.C. on June 9th for service, public viewing, and tributes at the U.S. Capitol. After lying in state for 34 hours in the Capitol Rotunda, a state funeral service was conducted at the Washington National Cathedral on June 11th, the day when President George W. Bush declared a national day of mourning. Later that day, after the service, Reagan's casket was transported back to California for interment at the Reagan Presidential Library. The state funeral was executed by the Military District of Washington. Various flags across the United States and around the world over official U.S. installations and operation locations were ordered to be flown at half-mast for 30 days in a presidential proclamation by Bush. In the announcement of Reagan's death, Bush also declared June 11th as National Day of Mourning. So he passed, and it was a huge mourning process for the entire United States, where we flew and honored him by flying the flag at half-mast. Flags across Canada and at all Canadian diplomatic missions in the United States flew at half-mast on the 11th as well, in sympathy with the U.S. National Day of Mourning. In Germany, flags flown at half-staff above government buildings on the 11th, and multiple other countries. So this is what I was talking about at the very beginning when I said that modern day leaders and their reach, it was a huge to-do, his funeral and the mourning that occurred. He wasn't part of those countries, but he was honored by them. As the president of the U.S., he probably had dealings with all of the leaders in those countries, but, he wasn't a citizen of those countries. It was carried by a his casket was carried by a military honor guard representing all branches of the United States Armed Forces into the lobby of the library to lie in repose. There, a brief family service was conducted. After the family left, the doors of the presidential library opened, and the public began filling in at a rate of 2,000 an hour throughout the night. In all, about 108,000 people visited the presidential library to see the casket. That's a lot of people. I'm sure many just came from all over to go see it. The real cost with any presidential death, though, is in the day of mourning. Officials estimate that the paid time off for government workers after Reagan's death cost the country more than $423 million. So that's crazy. I guess just having that day off to go mourn it, and for this highly influential figure was quite a high cost. But I thought it was interesting, the process that embalming has, and then everything that Reagan after his death went through. I didn't realize that they would fly the body out and then fly it back and still have like multiple funeral services. Basically, they had it in DC in like 2 different locations, and they had it in California. It's crazy. That's a lot of funerals to have, but it was interesting. Anyways, that is the end of this, and seeing as it's not Tuesday, I won't be covering any news until next Tuesday. So give it a few. I will be back tomorrow for the next day of 13 Days in the Crypt. Tomorrow will be Memento Mori of the Victorian England and their relationship with death and funeral practices. So I hope you were able to learn something today and you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. That's the whole reason I do the live stream, is so that people can interact with me and ask questions and just really get down in the dirt with ideology. And yes, I do love the cheesy puns that you can do with this career field. I love it. Yeah, so have a great evening, and I will see you guys